Welcome back guys, Jimmy Jules here again with another CREY prop tutorial. In today's episode, we'll be going over the Raycast prop. Firstly, we'll go through the adjustments we can make to the prop through the settings page, and then we'll go through some examples afterwards. The first option that we have here is the trigger type. Once our Raycast is activated, this will determine whether a signal is sent forever, or only while the Raycast has its object in range. Next down we have the length that our Raycast will be, and if we zoom out a bit, we can see this is visually indicated by the green line coming out of the Raycast prop. You can see if we set this to a length of 1, this representation is shrunk, and we can see the Raycast will detect anything within that 1 meter range. The next setting we have is what the Raycast will be triggered by. By default, this will be set to any player, so any player will be able to activate our Raycast. We can also set this to any prop if we want to detect an object. We have a target option here as well, and with this we can use the T shortcut and target another prop, and the Raycast will only detect that prop. We also have the ability to set the Raycast to be triggered by anything, which will be a player or a prop. Except target is basically the complete opposite of the target option, so it will be activated by everything except for the target that we select. And we can also detect tags as well. So we could use this, for example, to detect a specific team in a multiplayer game. Next down we have the penetrate option, and if we enable this, the Raycast will see through objects that it's not set to detect. So for example, if there's a block between the Raycast and the player, blocking the Raycast's view, if we enable the penetrate option, the Raycast will see through that rock and detect the player. We have a global option here as well, and if we enable this, the Raycast will not rotate with any objects that we've glued it to. You can see here that I have the global option enabled, and even though the Raycast prop itself is rotating, the laser that it puts out is still pointing the same way. If I disable the global option, you can see the laser will rotate with the prop. Then just beneath this we have the detected outputs for when our Raycast is activated. We'll go through some examples of how to use these settings now. First of all, we'll start out with something really simple. We're going to use our Raycast like a tripwire, so that when a player runs over this line, they activate a spawner that spawns a rock above them. You can see that the Raycast doesn't show up while you're in play mode, but when we run across that area where we put the wire, a rock spawns above us and falls down. This is because the Raycast is sending its signal from the detected port into the spawner's spawn port. We can also rotate the Raycast prop while we're in play mode to detect a player or a prop in a specific area. I've just got my lookout rotator prop placed beneath my Raycast prop, and I'm going to glue my Raycast to the lookout rotator with the G shortcut. Now if I unpause the game, you can see the Raycast points towards the target of the lookout rotator. The target in this case is a player, and you can see that we can target the player and the Raycast will rotate with the lookout rotator so that we can detect a player within a specific area. If we jump into play mode and then head over to the area where our Raycast was pointing, you can see that it doesn't matter where in the area that we are, the Raycast will point towards us and detect us if we're in that area. This is very similar to a sensor prop. We can also use our Raycast prop to make some automated pathfinding. For our setup here, I've just got a Raycast prop, a directional mover, and a rotator, and with these three props we're going to make this dog avoid some walls and do some pathfinding. First of all, I'm going to place the Raycast directly above the dog, and I'm going to target the dog with the Raycast. I'm then going to jump into the settings and set the Raycast's target to be accept target. This will mean that the Raycast will detect anything except for the dog, which is what we're after in this case. We're going to target our pug with our directional mover and also with our rotator. We're going to open up the settings for our rotator, and we'll plug in the detected output from our Raycast into the rotator's power. We're then going to box these three props up by highlighting all of them, pressing the B shortcut, and then selecting our box it up box. And finally I'm going to glue this box to our pug. This will mean that all the props inside the box move with the pug. I've just placed the pug in this box of invisible walls, and you can see that when the Raycast hits a wall, it activates our rotator and rotates the pug. This of course isn't too advanced at the moment. He's just turning right to avoid walls, but let's see what else we can add to make this a bit better. We've got a very similar setup here, this time with Porco the pig. We've got our Raycast prop in the exact same spot that it was, just pointing forwards, detecting when there is something in the way. But this time we have two rotators and a randomizer thrown in as well. This time, rather than running our raycast directly into the rotator's power, I'm going to open up our randomizer, and with the detected output from our raycast prop, I'm going to activate the input and the randomize inputs on our randomizer. I've set this particular randomizer to have 2 ports, and we're going to plug each of them into its own separate rotator. These rotators are rotating in opposite directions, so one will turn right and one will turn left. Basically what this is doing is whenever the pig detects something in front of it, it's going to randomly choose to either go left or right. We've also got all of these props boxed up in this box it up box, and again this box is glued to Porco the pig. Before this is going to work though, we need to target Porco with our directional mover, and both of our rotator props as well. Now with this all boxed up, we're free to copy this around as many times as we like. So I've gone ahead and copied this setup a few times, and you can see we've got a bit of a farm full of pigs. You can see the pigs will avoid you if they get close, and they also avoid each other and the walls as well. I've got these pigs contained within an invisible wall, then with a bit of a fence on the outside, so that they have time to detect the invisible wall and turn away before they get to the fence line so they never go through it. This is another fairly basic pathfinding setup, and we're only choosing randomly to go left or right at this stage, and this may not be the most useful thing in some circumstances. So let's look at how to make something that more intelligently decides whether to go left or right. As you can see, I've got a bit of a maze set up here, and we'll be making something that can navigate its way through this. So these are the props that we're going to be using for this setup. We have 2 raycasts this time. On the familiar side we have our directional mover and our 2 rotators, but this time we're going to be controlling these with a selector, and I've got an if not and an OR gate in there as well, but we'll see what these do very shortly. You can see we have our rotators rotating in 2 opposite directions again. We've just done this by making one speed 500 and another negative 500. I'm going to place the raycasts directly above the object that we're controlling. In this case we're going to be moving the box, but you could replace this with whatever prop you like. As you can see, I have these 2 raycasts pointing at 45-degree angles out to the left and right of the box. This is what we'll be using to detect whether we should go left or right. In this case I have the raycasts both set to the same settings, with a length of 4 and the accept target option. We're going to target the box that we're moving with the T shortcut, and this way the raycasts won't detect the box that they're sitting on. While we're at it, we're also going to target our cube with the directional mover, and both of the rotator props as well. Then for a final bit of preparation, we're going to glue our box to the cube, and this way all of the props will move with the cube. Firstly, I'll get the raycast settings for the one that's pointing to the right of the cube, and you can imagine if this raycast does detect something, we're going to want to turn to the left to avoid it. So we'll grab our left-facing rotator, which is the one with the negative value, and I'm also going to open up the page for the selector as well. Now our selector is going to be on port 1 by default, so we'll use this as the not turning port, or if we're moving straight ahead. I'm going to plug the detected from our right raycast into number 2 of our selector, and I'm also going to plug this to output from our selector into the power of our left turning rotator. So you can imagine once this raycast is activated, it's going to set our selector to port 2, and then activate our rotator to turn the object left. We're going to do the exact same thing now, but with the left pointing raycast. I'm going to plug this one into port 3 of our selector, and then grab our right turning rotator, which is the one with the positive value, and I'm going to activate the power of that with number 3 on our selector. Now if we leave it like this, our object is going to continue turning even once the raycast has stopped detecting an object. To prevent this, we need to say if neither of the raycasts are hitting an object, set our selector back to port 1. So a way to say that with gates would be if this raycast or this raycast are not hitting an object, then we'll set our selector back to port 1. So that's exactly what we'll do. We'll plug both of our raycasts detected output into port 1 and port 2 of our OR gate, and then we're going to plug the output of our OR gate into the input of our NOT gate. So now we're saying if neither of these raycasts are active, then activate this NOT gate. And this NOT gate will of course set our selector back to port 1, which will turn off our rotators and stop the object from rotating again. As usual, we have all these props in a box, which is glued to our cube. So we have our moment of truth. We've got our cube in front of our maze here, and if I unpause the game, you can see that our cube is able to detect with the raycasts when it's near a wall, The Raycast then activates our rotator to rotate the cube away from the wall, and the cube is able to make its way successfully through the maze. So a really quick and simple setup with only a few props here, but we're able to make an object that's able to navigate its own way through a map. I've set up a spawner to continuously spawn these cubes at the maze entrance, and as you can see, even though they hit the entrance and the walls all at different angles, they're able to navigate each individually through the maze. Some of them may take different paths through the maze as doors open and close, but in the end they will make it through. Anyway guys, that's just about all for this one. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you have any questions or comments at all, definitely leave a comment. This has been Jimmy Jules, and I'll see you in the next one.